Hey, good morning, everybody. Thanks for being here. Really excited to be the MC today. My name's Ben Schmerler. I'm the Senior Solutions Consultant at Independent Security Evaluators. We actually have a setup over in the IoT space over there, and I'm doing a talk at 12:20 about hacking toilets. Very mature subject matter. I'm sure we're going to be very serious and not do any immature toilet humor. But what I'm up here for right now is to introduce two really smart ladies. We have Anshul Gupta with Microsoft and Katie Masouras with Luda Security. They're going to talk a little bit for a while, and yeah, come on up.
All right, thank you all and welcome to our talk. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. I know it's been a long, compact week for everybody, but we're gonna get right into it. So before we begin, of course, the obligatory disclaimers and the cats, the obligatory cats. So in this presentation, Anshul and I are going to go through some history of bug bounties in general, history of how the Microsoft bug bounties started, how they went from no way to okay, to this is the way. And we're going to cover some lessons learned along the way and things that you can apply to your own bug bounty programs.
So,
so first, I want to go through a little history lesson.
Katie, before we jump into that,
Yes.
I really quickly want to thank Katie for pioneering bug bounty at Microsoft. So thank you and kudos for that. I also want to briefly touch upon why this bug bounty is so important for Microsoft folks specifically. Because when you think about our lives, they are more connected, more and more connected than ever before. And with the innovation in AI, it is becoming very evident that technology will be embedded deep in our lives. And with that innovation, whatever we thought was safe before, we have to revisit it. Because our threat actors are using the innovation in AI as well. And when we are looking at these things, we have to get ahead of the curve, we have to defend ourselves. And Microsoft Security Response Center, which you were part of, Katie, at one point, is at the forefront of this as a defender community. And when we are looking at the vulnerabilities that are coming in, we see it as a great partnership with our security researchers. And we want to make sure that we get these vulnerabilities, we review these, and we have spent 20 years doing this. Many years you spent doing this, I've spent few years doing this, and we have a fair bit of lessons we have learned. So we are going to share that journey with you. So if you are new to bug bounty, you can take those lessons, build it in your program, and if you have been doing it, would love to hear your thoughts after the talk as to what you have learned.
And thank you so much. So how many of you are running bug bounties today? Three of you. Okay, so this will be a great talk for those of you who are curious, and especially those of you who have heard bug bounties as almost a common buzzword these days, but I can tell you from the history books, it has not always been that way. So all the way back in 1968, Don Knuth wrote a book and introduced the idea of paying cash rewards for pointing out flaws. There was nothing new under the bug bounty sun until about 1995 when Mozilla introduced a $500 cash prize if you pointed out a security flaw. And again, a long gap in the history books until 2010 when Google, with a brand new 2-year-old at the time Chrome browser, decided to introduce a limited, narrow-scoped bug bounty paying $1,337 or LEET dollars, that is hacker speak for you're pretty cool. And then they raised the price about 3 months later to over $30,000. So we saw huge price inflations happening at the beginning of what I call the modern bug bounty age. Now, Microsoft and I started the bug bounties there at Microsoft in 2013. So we've had about a decade of running bug bounties at not only Google, but the biggest software company in the world. And that really ended up catching fire where bug bounty platforms started growing up and became a viable business model. You've probably seen their booths on the display halls and everything. And the idea of welcoming hackers and accepting their bug reports and paying them money became much more common, all the way to when we had an inflection point, another inflection point, with Hack the Pentagon. That was when the US DoD, after hearing from me and others about the benefits of listening to hackers, decided to start the US government's very first legal hacking program, inviting hackers to test their security. So at this point, bug bounties and, more importantly, vulnerability disclosure programs are written into so many legislations around the world. It's requirements for procurement in the federal government in the United States. There are requirements across regulations in Europe and beyond. And so the idea of embracing the hacker mindset has really taken off. And this kind of obtuse looking slide is how it got started at Microsoft. So a lot of people at Microsoft were against the idea because, frankly, at the time, and still to this day, over 200,000 to 300,000 non-spam email messages a year would come in as security reports, potential reports to investigate, for free to Microsoft Security Response Center. So they were thinking, why would we pay for bugs when we're getting them for free? And this graph was part of the answer. So what you're looking at here was real data from the IE10 beta period, and that's that low graph where you see the low purple line. That was how many bug reports were received during the IE10 beta period. And that big purple spike was how many bug reports were received after that product was out of beta. Now, why, if the researchers were willing to give the bugs to Microsoft for free, why were they holding on to them and waiting for this big spike of vulnerabilities to report them all at once? The answer was, without any kind of incentive or recognition, they couldn't get their name in a Microsoft bulletin because no bulletins were released if it only affected the beta products. The bulletins were only released, and acknowledgement and thank you was only given if it affected all of the previous products. So anything that affected only the newest version, they were holding on to those bugs and reporting them all at once, kind of at the worst possible time, right, after the beta period's over. So what I did was I projected, and that's the dotted line that you see there. I showed this to the leadership team of IE, and I said, listen, I believe we can do a little traffic shaping with these friendly hackers. We can invite them to report bugs earlier, give them some recognition, and give them a little cash reward. The leaders of IE took this idea, they loved it. This was slide number 2 in a 12-slide deck, and literally the head of IE at the time said, yes, 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 I'm gonna make it easy on you, how much? And this is what started the Microsoft Bug Bounty programs. I will tell you, the resistance was up until that point, what took 3 years, effectively. And at one point, I remember hearing from an executive saying, that's the stupidest bleeping idea I've ever heard in my life. Once these programs were launched and they were a success, I saw an email from that same leader saying, oh, I'm so glad we're finally doing these bug bounty programs. They're such a great idea. So one thing to encourage you all is that if you have an idea that seems novel at the time, get the data to back up your ideas and push forward. Now I'm going to turn it over to Anshul, who's going to talk about some of the successes of the Microsoft Bug Bounty programs as it's happened in the last 10 years.
Thank you, Katie. And this is the data from the last 5 years. We just celebrated our 10-year anniversary. And if you look at some of the numbers here, we have paid 60 million to our researchers, roughly 60 million to our researchers over the last 5 years. And what this doesn't show is we have paid over 1,000 researchers from 45 different countries. So I want that 45 number to sink in, because it's really important to understand that when you are building your own security programs, your own security teams, how many countries do you have your security teams based in? I can assure you, none of us have teams based in 45 different countries. So when you can have researchers participate in your program from those many countries, it truly reflects the diversity of your consumer and customers who you are trying to protect. So that's one really valuable thing about the bug bounty program. Then another thing that we learned over time was we ran specialized programs. Like we have a program for Windows, Xbox, Edge, Office, because what was very clear to us is it's important for our researchers to have a real focused programs, and so we have over 36 programs that we run. We also have specialized categories of awards. Like if you have cross-tenant data leak, or server-side request forgery, or zero-click RCEs, like those are the specialized rewards that we have come up over the period of time based upon our learnings. We also look at some of the researchers' challenge, like we fund specific researchers' challenge so that we can focus researchers on the highest risk areas. And that's our goal. Sometimes people think that, oh my God, researchers are finding too many things in one given area. What's going on here? Because that's by design. We want to have the focus of our research community in that area because we feel that's the most critical area in our entire workflow, and we want that additional scrutiny over there. So I want to share, like, is it all like glorious and green and everything is going really well? As I shared that we have our own learnings. We approach everything with a growth mindset, and as we fail or stumble along the way, we are like, okay, dust ourselves up. What did we learn from it? Because at the end of the day, what matters most is your learnings and you making incremental improvements, as opposed to like always saying, I'm the best, I can't be improved. I feel growth mindset is really important here. So with that, without naming the specific issues, there was one issue where it was reported to us by the researcher, and we were trying to reproduce it. It was not an easy to reproduce issue, so it took us a long time to reproduce because we were working like our research team, security research team, internal security research team was partnering very closely with our engineering team and trying to reproduce the issue. But it was just really hard. It was some kind of a race condition, and we were not very successful at it. As a result, the researcher got very frustrated with us, and they were like, we don't know what Microsoft is doing, and looks like they have no interest in my submission, and they're not going to do anything about it. So they dropped the POC publicly. They shared the POC publicly. Well, that's not something that any vendor would ever want, any software service provider would ever want, because your customer security is your primary focus. And that was a very challenging situation for us after that, because now we had to worry about all the attacks in the wild very quickly, and we had to put some of the mitigations in place. But the lesson from that was that we failed to communicate with this researcher in a very timely manner. We failed to bring them along on this journey. And it wasn't intentional. It was more like we were so inward focused trying to reproduce it. We could have sought more of their help. So when you do these programs, the learning is please bring them along. They are your close partner. And learn from what they are finding. Like, how are they able to reproduce? If you have to like sit with them, have a Teams call, sit with them in a conference room or something, please do that. That was our one learning. The second learning from there was sometimes it's about also acknowledging the work that they are doing. So it's also important that once they share, how are you acknowledging that researcher's work? That also plays a big part. One of the success stories that I have from this, the tale of two bounties, is one researcher submitted us a report. It was so well drafted and so well written that the moment we saw it, we were like, oh my God, this is totally a new class of vulnerabilities, and this needs more investigation. So we immediately funded a researcher grant, and as a result, we found some 15 to 20 additional vulnerabilities because of that grant, because more researchers participated in it, and we had the kind of scrutiny that we desired, and that gave us the returns. So overall, I think in both cases, it was good learnings. So when we are evolving our bug bounty program at Microsoft, we are always looking at where are our high risk areas, high value targets, and we are always bringing a spotlight to those areas. We are also trying to make sure that we have 2 times, 3 times payout for those areas. Like if someone finds a Hyper-V vulnerability, which is escape from a guest to a host. That is what, somewhere like 200K in reward or something. So we are always making sure that we are appropriately rewarding our researchers for the hard work that they do. Over to you, Katie.
Oops. We both did it.
I think we jumped one
I'll go
slide.
one back.
Yeah.
So that brings us to some of the modern day bug bounties. Now, everybody knows that the numbers of bugs keep increasing as more and more products and the complexity of the interconnectedness of products and the supply chain grows more complex. The numbers of bugs just keeps growing. And a lot of security teams view a bug bounty program, now that it's a widely accepted practice, as a way to almost control the flow of vulnerability information into their organizations. This is very different from Microsoft's approach, which had a much more open door policy earlier than many vendors ever even thought about engaging with the security research community. I am not the first hacker to be hired by Microsoft, and I certainly won't be the last. But modern bug bounties today are showing, certainly acceptance of the practice, but they're not necessarily using the bugs as a signal. And what Anshul was talking about was really important, using those bugs as an indicator of further investigation to try and eliminate classes of vulnerabilities. And that is something that we embraced from the beginning of the bug bounty programs. The original first ongoing six-figure bug bounty in the entire industry was at the original start of the Microsoft bug bounties, and that was looking for brand new exploitation techniques, not just individual bugs and exploits. So Microsoft has always embraced this idea of going broader and going after things that take the longest time to fix, the most kind of planning and investment in security. So if you're thinking about starting a bug bounty program, one, don't make the mistake of thinking it's a way to control security researchers. It's a way to engage with them, embrace the work that they have to do, and it's also smoke that you can use to identify bigger fires and put them out before they're a big problem. So bug bounty programs alone can't fix your internal processes. And that is something that, Anshul's going to talk about in a second, but you really have to turn this information into a way to improve your security development lifecycle, to take what you've learned, to allow yourself to make changes to prevent those bugs in the future. Now, one thing I also see in modern bug bounties that's a little bit counterintuitive for people is they keep thinking, well, if the offense market or the black market will pay more, I need to increase my prices to be able to compete with them. That's not only false, but in the end, you're going to end up with a perverse incentive. And the perverse incentive there will be, you actually want to hire and attract people to work inside your organization to prevent these bugs. Why would they ever take a job inside your organization if you're paying extraordinary amounts externally per bug? So you do have to keep track of, essentially your internal rewards and compensation, your internal security investments, the ways that you try and shift left throughout this process, and use the bug bounties as a signal to direct your security investments and efforts. I'm going to turn it over to Anshul to talk more about that.
So here is think of it as a blueprint of when you are building a bug bounty program. If any of you in this room, which I'm assuming some of you, are thinking that I want to launch a bug bounty program, what does it mean? As Katie pointed out, it's not about like, oh, I have received bounties or I have received these vulnerability reports and my job is done. I need to set aside some funding, and once I have some funding set aside, that's all I need. No, that is the minimum part of what this program entails. Like putting that funding aside is the easy bit. It's what you do once those vulnerabilities come into your system, how you treat them, how you track them is the most critical aspect. So let's walk through some of these blocks over here. The very first one is report by researcher. So you will have some portal, some email address, some distribution list or something set up where you will receive the vulnerability reports. And again, make sure that whatever that portal is, researchers get a bidirectional communication. And that is always little bit of a hit and miss, because you want to not be like just nag them with communication, but also make sure that they are getting periodic updates. As I shared in one of the bounty scenarios where we failed to share the updates on what's going on inside, and it resulted in a little bit of a messy situation for our customers and us. So once the reports come in, you want to have some SLAs for triaging those reports and making sure you can reproduce those cases, or at least partner with the researchers to see where they land. Like, are they really the bug reports, or it's a misunderstanding somewhere? So after you have triaged it, these 3 steps that I've listed here, these happen in parallel. The very first one is, which most of our customers and our community don't realize, is the moment we get a report, we immediately deploy detections for that particular vulnerability. Because what we believe in is, if one researcher has reported something, they may not be the only one who could have found this issue. Some APT might have identified this issue and maybe already exploiting it, and we want to detect it right away and not wait for us to fix it within the SLA or anything. So we deploy the detections in production immediately to identify if anyone else is exploiting it. And if by any chance we see any exploitation at all, we immediately deploy mitigations. And when I say mitigations, this is not the fix for the vulnerability. This is actually a break in the kill chain. So we make sure that the kill chain cannot be progressed as the attacker would want it to. So we deploy some mitigation immediately, and we pay our researchers right away. So we do not wait to pay our researchers until the very end of the cycle. We pay it more towards the front of it, because we know they have spent so much cycle in finding this. And some of the researchers, for them, this is their day job. And we don't want to hold back that payout, so we immediately pay them the bounty. Though they are still under CVD, which is our Coordinated Vulnerability Disclosure Program, and they are not supposed to disclose the vulnerability until we have really fixed it. Then the next step is, we work with engineering and we start fixing the vulnerability. Because remember, the code fix hasn't gone out. We haven't even identified the code fix. We have just done the mitigation. So we start working on the code fix, and sometimes we backport the fix even to the unsupported versions, because it's the customer's safety and security that's paramount to us. And we start testing this. While we are doing this with our engineering teams, in parallel, the security research team within Microsoft, as Katie hinted, they are doing variant hunting. And by variant hunting, what I mean is, they are not just looking at this particular point fix, they are also looking at how can we fix this class of issues across our other products as well. Because the researcher may have found it in one particular product, but it's quite possible it may exist in other products. And we are also looking at not just for the exact same thing in other products, we are looking for the variants of this particular vulnerability. Like, could it be tweaked in a certain way, and could we have found it, a different variant of it in some product? Because what we don't want is, once we blog about it and we share the details, then we get a flood of other sets of vulnerabilities which we could have fixed ahead of time. And how can we mitigate, again, our risk to our customers? We send the bits to our SUVP program, which is our Security Update Validation Program. So this is a beta program. We have customers subscribed to it. And the reason for us to send these bits early on to this program is because customers run our software and services in all different environments. And we want to make sure that our fix hasn't destabilized any particular workflows. So we get very early feedback from these beta testers, and we know that this is a solid build which can be shipped to our billions of customers. Every Tuesday when we do our, every second Tuesday of the month, when we do the Patch Tuesday release, it gets absorbed by billions of customers. So we want to make sure our builds are safe and stable. We also send our detections to our MAP program. This is our Microsoft Active Protections program. So a ton of AV vendors are part of this. So I believe roughly 80 plus AV vendors are part of it, because our goal is here not to just protect the customers who are using Microsoft Defender and Microsoft security products. Our goal is to make sure that we are broadening the horizon. If you are using other AV products, you are equally protected. So they all get the same detection guidance, and they can also protect against this. That's when the release is shared with the customers. We still keep 30 days embargo with our, for the details to be released by the researchers, because we want to give 30 days for our customers to patch. So you don't see the details shared right away. And after that, we share the details. We blog, and we blog in tandem with the security researchers to give them credit, as you called out as well, Katie. And we update our security guide with the CVSS scores, with the details in there to say, hey, this is highly critical issue, please patch urgently. Or no, this is not that critical, you can patch at your regular cadence. So with that, over to you.
So hopefully you have learned some things, not just about the history of Microsoft's bug bounty programs, but actually the depth of how far you can take these programs if you are very mindful of what outcomes you actually want to drive. And that brings us to what you could learn from this, what you can take away. And so in the next week, establish the goals that you have for your program. Now, Microsoft, as you saw on the last slide, has been doing this for a long time, long before the bug bounties ever started. And they were incorporating a lot of the principles that Anshul was talking about in terms of broader investigations, depth investigations, mitigations, working with partners like the MAP program. All of these things are part of a very sophisticated and mature ecosystem. Most organizations in the world do not have that kind of experience and that kind of benefit. So next week, think about your immediate goals. What are the goals of your bug bounty program? Think about it in terms of where are you trying to take your overall security program, because this isn't just an isolated checkbox activity. It is something that you should be building into your broader security program in a very deliberate way. And then you decide on the metrics that would support those goals. Every so often you have to reevaluate them, because at the beginning of your journey, just like Microsoft at the beginning of the journey, it wasn't about how many bugs or how much was paid out. It's much more broad metrics that you take about how many customers you might have protected with the advent of this program, how many people you might have hired out of the security ecosystem that now no longer had to make a choice between getting paid for their security knowledge or turning it over to you to get it fixed. In the next 3 months, you should ensure that you have people and processes to support these programs. I love that the bug bounty platforms have made a viable business model out of the first step, which is initial triage and ticketing. However, most people understand that that is not the end of a bug's journey. That's not the end of a bug's life, right? You need the internal processes, as Anshul was describing, go into great depth. And if your biggest investment is in your bug bounty infrastructure and not a lot on the inside, that's what we call bug bounty Botox. You need to be pretty on the inside as well and really build up those processes. Benchmark your metrics, get yourself a baseline, and things to consider are things like your average time to fix. How long does it take you to fix your critical bugs versus your less severe bugs? And then also, are you driving towards fewer critical bugs and more complex bugs? A lot of people will say, well, we're driving towards fewer bugs overall. But if the complexity is actually, if there's simpler and simpler bugs that you could have found yourself, your metrics are off. So make sure that you are very mindful of your goals. And then in the next 6 months, feed that bug bounty data into your security development lifecycle. Identify all the places where you could have made improvements to find those bugs yourself. Use the bugs as a signal. They are an indication, a symptom of underlying security process failures, and you should be taking that knowledge to shift left. The one thing I want to say, one thing before I turn it back over to Anshul to wrap us up, is the reason there are so many cats in the initial slides is that the bug bounties were kind of a pet project for me. I have pet cats. And some of you know I'm half Native Pacific Islander. I'm half Chamorro from the Mariana Islands. Well, the Hawaiians, our cousins, have a word for, it's not an owner of a pet, my pet project, the bug bounty programs. It's the word is kahu, and it means guardian of something precious. So thank you for being the kahu of my pet bug bounty program. Over to you.
Thanks, Katie. That's so well said. I want to, like, Katie has wrapped us up really well with the key takeaways. I want to highlight a few things. Katie already covered these, but I just want to underscore these. When you are building a bug bounty program, receiving the bounties is just the beginning. What you do under the hood with those bounties, like your processes, people, tools, they tremendously matter. And it's like receiving bounties is not about, oh my God, I want to show the world I am investing in security. It's about what are you going to do? Are you shifting left? Are you changing your processes? Are you taking that as a signal? So all those things matter a lot. How you respond, what is your response speed on those things? So those are all very critical. Then the second thing is, as you learn through your bug bounty program, be nimble. Because when you are nimble, you will learn a thing or two, and you will have to move fairly quickly. As I shared in one of the learnings that sometimes we have to tell our security researchers that this is out of scope. And that doesn't make a good case, because then the researchers feel like, oh my God, I'm not getting paid for this work I did. And defining the scope of the program is more of an art than science, because there's no good way where you can draw a line and say, okay, these are the things which are in scope and these are the things out of scope, kind of a thing. So make sure you are nimble, you are ready to change, you are ready to have researcher grant programs, you are ready to launch new programs as needed to pivot the focus. And the third thing, be gracious to your research community, because they are your partners. They are in this with you. Many of the researchers are not there only for the bounty payouts. They are actually sometimes looking for the recognition outside of the bounty payout, the actual dollar amount. What they're looking for is, am I being recognized? So for us, when they see it their name on the leaderboard, that's a huge win for them. They celebrate it. When they get our MSRC swag, like, you should see the Twitter blowing up with that. They're like, oh my God, I got MSRC MVP swag. That's a huge deal for them. Our Blue Hat conference, where it's more of a red carpet welcome that we provide our research community. They want to be part of that. They want to come in and join that, because they're like, okay, if I get invited to it, it's such a prestigious moment for us. And they love meeting with the MSRC team. So please think about these other ways you can acknowledge your research community as well. And for any researchers in the room, I do want to say thank you so much for all the hard work that you do. For anyone who is listening online or who is going to listen to it later, thank you again. And I do want to wrap it by saying thank you to the MSRC team for the hard work that you all do. I know you are working behind the scenes. It's like I always say, to put on a good show, all the hard work happens behind the stage. So they do all the hard work, and I want to say thank you to the MSRC team. So with that, thank you everyone, and it was great working with you, Katie, on this one.
Thank you, and thank you, Anshul, for joining me up here to talk about the history and the evolution of bug bounties. Everyone, please do fill out your surveys. We are going to be here for questions for another few minutes or so, so thank you all so much.
Hi, thank you very much. Very interesting presentation. We already have a very active bug bounty program at Dashlane. One place where we keep having struggles from time to time, and I'm curious to hear your advice, is when we disagree with the researchers about the vulnerability.
Mm-hmm. So what's your question? When you disagree, like, how do you handle the disagreement, or?
When we disagree that there's either a vulnerability, we consider it's a design choice, or it's something that's outside of the scope of our things we can do.
So I can answer, and you can feel free to chime in. There will be disagreements. Whenever two people are talking, there will be two different opinions But what I would say is, first of all, take the opinions and emotions out of it. Look at it factually. And then also, you may still arrive at a conclusion. One party may be saying this is a vulnerability, and the other party may be saying this is by design. What I would say is put a lens on before you give this verdict to the researcher that this is a by design choice, that they are going to share it. And will you be okay with everyone knowing this, and or do you think it will put your customers at risk then? If the answer is it will put my customers at risk, then your design choice is not secure by design choice. You need to go revisit it. But if you feel, yeah, go ahead, share it more broadly, and this is secure by design, and I feel like strongly I will stand by it, sure, take a stand.
Yeah, and the only thing I would add to that is make sure you always thank them even if there's a disagreement, because
Totally agree.
honestly, you know, thanking them, standing firm in your disagreement, thanking them for helping you protect your users and your company, and then looking forward to their next report. That is usually something that, you know, that I try to say when responding to researchers no matter what, because especially if they disagree, you want to encourage them to come back. Mm-hmm. It's like there's another question out there.
Great talk. I had a question along those lines. You know, we have a pretty mature bug bounty program, and it's been really successful for us. We've had a lot of really high quality reports from brilliant researchers out there, but we are also sometimes inundated with kind of low quality spammy reports. Mm-hmm. And I was wondering if you had any lessons learned on the initial triage and validation stage there, so that the engineering teams aren't, there's a high signal to noise ratio when it gets there.
Mm-hmm. I can take the first whack at this one. So one, helping to reduce some of those is crisply defining your scope. And if you've already done that and you feel like, you know, you've already stated that there are some exclusions that you won't pay for or that you don't consider to be vulnerabilities, or even better, that you've mitigated in some other way, right? You know, it might appear that it's vulnerable, but it's actually mitigated on the back end. Having that crisply defined can help. The other thing that you can do, honestly, is, you know, thank them, look forward to their next report, but keep in mind that even the spammiest of researchers might just be at the very beginning of their career. So the biggest thing that you want to do is not alienate them, you know, or make them feel unappreciated. Of course, you know, we've all been the victims of what I call beg bounty, where, you know, they just keep coming and you can't discourage them from, you know, from their mission to try and get paid for this thing that is not really an issue. And, you know, usually if you just make a final statement, reduce your verbal attack surface, stay as brief as possible, because otherwise they'll pick at, you know, those specific words you've said, and then, you know, just try and move on. But yeah, unfortunately, some people are quite persistent. And on the researcher side, I usually try and tell people who are very frustrated and try and, you know, convince a company that they should be paid for a bug is like, look, you made a best effort, you made your technical case. Think about your ROI as a researcher. Do you really want to spend all this time for potentially, you know, maybe you'll get a small payout for this, but look at how long you've already invested in trying to get this issue across, and just let it go, move on to the next target, either at this organization or another.
Yeah, great points. I want to say also look at whatever portal you're receiving the reports on. Like, how can you automate some of those pieces? So the spammiest of those, they just get rejected upfront, or at least the researcher gets a note back, hey, you haven't filled these very critical data points, because in the absence of this, I cannot, like sometimes they will just send half a line in there or something. They won't even tell you which product the report is about. So those you don't need to spend your human capital, because that's your most precious capital. So automate those pieces. Then second thing you should also do is, there is something called AI we all have been lately talking about. So use AI, like power of AI in this, because every report that comes in, you can totally find your AI, like use that AI power to find, okay, these are not pattern matching to a solid report. I need to go back to the researcher, like automated response to them, and say, hey, we need these data points. Mm-hmm. Because in absence of these, we can't figure out. Another thing that you can also do for AI, by the way, which we are finding very useful, is you can find duplicate reports, because it does happen that sometimes you will get the same report from 2 or 3 different researchers almost in the similar time frame, and then you can easily tag them all together and start working with them together. So that's another thing you can do to reduce time on your side, because Microsoft, we have a significant investment in all these areas. So sometimes it's quite possible that there is a different security researcher on our side working on one report and then the second one, and we may be duplicating our efforts. So again, we leverage AI there.
You know, Anshul just reminded me of something that's super important. Your duplicate rate is a metric. This is something that's not normally counted in a bug bounty program. It's not only a metric, but it's potentially an indicator that that particular vulnerability is not only highly discoverable, but could possibly be highly exploitable. This is a data point that you should use in your internal process to possibly speed up a fix of a particular issue that seems to be on fire. And that, you know, to Anshul's earlier points, it's another indication too that you should look for similar issues. The more duplicates affect a particular issue, the more urgency you have to deal with similar issues because they're highly discoverable.
Thanks a lot.
All right, other questions? Yes.
Hey there. It was interesting hearing your discussion of the scope and the debate that happens with the researchers on the scope. Is this in scope? Is this not in scope? I'm wondering, is there an example of something that's happened at Microsoft over the years where the research community has just totally caused you to rethink something that was previously thought to be out of scope is now in scope?
I can give you an example, and great question, Bob. So for us, sometimes it's like Teams. Teams is a good example. Like Teams, we did not have a program for Microsoft Teams. And we got a few vulnerability reports for Microsoft Teams. And to Katie's point, we did not want these researchers to feel like their work was not valued, or we do not care about the security of a particular product. So we spun out a program for Microsoft Teams. So when I said that we have almost like 36 programs out there, sometimes it's these vulnerabilities that we get, the patterns that we see, that helps us define where we need to take our investment, where is the biggest return on this investment. Because at the end of the day, we are investing. And we want to make sure we are finding the highest value vulnerabilities which will protect our customers' data. So that's how we created this program. And many of our programs are created that way, where we start to see some pattern and we go like, oh my God, we need to get these in a formal channel so we get even more of these. And we invest and we fix these issues with really high speed.
So I want to add to that answer. Your vulnerability disclosure program should ideally be as broad in scope as possible. Ideally, it should cover all of your technology. And that means, you know, if you see something, say something, tell us about it. What your bug bounty program can do is narrow the scope to focus those friendly researcher eyes on the most important issues for you to tackle, either tackle first or with highest priority. And you know, the Microsoft bug bounties started just like all the other major bug bounties started. They started narrowly in scope. You know, when I was going through the history, Google started with exactly one product, and it was a 2-year-old browser. Not with Gmail, not with any other online services, et cetera, but just the Chrome browser. Microsoft similarly started with just the IE in the beta period at first, before it expanded to include more supported versions of the browser and other flagship software. I think it's important to, you know, again, have the infrastructure to support the broadest possible vulnerability disclosure program, and then use the bug bounty as a focus tool. And that's where you can help narrow the scope.
Yeah.
I think we have time for one more question. All right, If there are no more questions, thank you all so much, and thank you again, Anshul, for
Thank
co-presenting
you.
with me.
Thank you, Katie. Great questions, folks. Thank you.
Thank you. All right.
Thanks again. Great job. Really loved your talk. Just a reminder, we have the survey that you need to try and fill out if you want to get the socks. You know, normally a lot of people like to talk about sock compliance. This is more like compliance to get socks. So make sure you take care of that. We got our next talk at 10:50, and I'll be introducing that in about a half hour. So be back and learn some more. Take care.